I purchased 17 properties while working full-time and going to school at night. And I did it without savings. And in this video, I'm going to show you how I did it so you can do it too. Hello and welcome back. And if you're new here, welcome to Nova Rise. I created this channel to share my real estate investment journey with you in hopes to offer you valuable tips and information that you can leverage in your investing journey. As of today, my portfolio is very diverse, having real estate, stocks, precious metals, and businesses in the equation. A couple of episodes ago, I shared with you how I bought my first investment property and eventually how I got to buy my second investment property. If you haven't seen those episodes, don't worry. I'm going to leave the link down in the description box below so that you can watch it after you're done with this episode. But back to the story. So at this point, I have already closed on one. A couple of years later, I closed on my second. And then a couple of months later, just a few months afterwards, the same real estate agent reaches out to me and asks me if I wanted to buy a complex of 17 properties. Now, at this point, of course, I wanted to buy it, but I had just recently closed on the purchase of my second property. And a few months in between is not going to be enough to help me build enough equity to do a cash out refi again. But I still didn't turn down the offer. I asked my realtor what was the asking price, and he confirmed that it was $520,000. Now, keep in mind that this was a couple of years ago, but $520,000 even back then was still a lot of money for someone who had no savings to pull up. In order for me to get my hands on this deal, I needed to come up with at least $130,000 just for the down payment, and I also needed to come up with enough money for the closing costs. Now, in case you're wondering how I got to those numbers, it's very easy. Remember, asking price is $520,000, and then 25% of that is $130,000. And then closing costs, depends on where you are, can go from 1 to 5%. I always use 5% in order to be conservative. It's always better to have more money in your bank account and not need it than not having enough for the closing costs. So at this point, I already know about the existence of this deal. I already run the numbers and they all cash flow beautifully, right? But I didn't know exactly what to do in order to come up with that money. And bear in mind that I was still in my full-time job. So I only have weekends and evenings to try to figure it out and talk to enough people to, guide me through the right path and help me find the solution that I was looking for. So I searched on a lot of websites. I went to a lot of real estate meetings, a lot of local RIA. And it wasn't until this one meeting that I stumbled upon an investor who offered to do a cash out refi. Now, bear in mind, at this point, I still didn't know what a cash out refi was, even though I did it in the purchase of my second property. But on this day, when I met this investor, she was the person who actually took the time to lay everything down for me. So for those who are brand new, a cash out refi is a way to just simply extract equity out of your property and use that equity to buy additional real estate. Actually go more in depth about the details in this particular video that you see on the screen. And I'm going to make sure you can find the link down below in the description and also in the comment section. So back to the story. This lady was explaining, hey, why don't you do a cash out refi? So I realized, okay, I already did that for the purchase of my second property, but I cannot do a cash out refi because my properties don't have enough equity for me to pull out again. And on top of that, I don't have any savings because I already used them all. So what can I do? And so what she suggested was that I worked with a partner that could potentially have a investment deal, a property that had enough equity or a property that was completely paid off, that I could do a cash out refi out of it and purchase that multifamily deal. And that's when the light bulb really went on. I realized that I did in fact know enough people within my circle that I could leverage for a cash out refi. Now, convincing them was another story. One of the things that you want to realize when you're investing in real estate is that this is a business of people relationship. You have to have a good relationship because everything travels fast. This is a business and where if you're really good at what you do, businesses are going to fly down the sky requesting your services. But if you're bad, news travel fast once again, and everyone will find out what you did. So I needed to pursue this in a way that it was beneficial and that I could create a win-win situation for everybody. Now, I'm not going to say who my partners are because they value their privacy, but in a nutshell, what happened is I sat down with them and I proposed them what I wanted to do. And in exchange for the cash out refi, they will get their money back in a matter of 5 years plus interest. So it was a nice way for them to make some passive income with a piece of real estate that was already sitting in the market and it was already generating cash flow. But what I offered to them was additional income on top of that cash flow that they were already getting. Now, like the old saying goes, if it was that easy, everyone will be doing it. And I'm not going to deny this was not easy at all, because these investors also had family members, and the family members found out what I was about to do. And there was a lot of friction in the equation. There was a lot of misunderstandings. They didn't really understand necessarily what I was trying to do. So one of the solutions that I came up in this deal was to make everyone a partner. So everyone had a percentage in this deal, but I will be ultimately the managing party, meaning I will process and handle everything. And all they needed to do was to say yay or nay. Why did I decide to do this? I needed to reassure them that ultimately they had the control, that even if I decided to go crazy and take that property and steal it, I can, because before I can even take that property away from them, I needed the signature of everyone involved in the equation. That's why it's so important to lay everything in writing, put it in a contract, put it in an LLC, and define the percentage of ownership. How do you define that? Well, that's something that you're going to have to discuss with your partners. But in this case, we discussed the partnership in a way that was beneficial for everybody, for them to have control of the deal, but also for me, so I can call the shots and work on the financing. Otherwise, the bank was not going to let me through with the cash out refi. Once I got that taken care of, it was time for the financing, for the action, for the cash out refi. So the cash out refi and the financing was actually done with the same lender, because I was looking for ways to streamline the entire process. And it's usually easier if you deal with the same lender. So this lender took this property right here and performed the cash out refi. They pulled the equity out of it. And then with the money that they pull out of the equity, that went straight into the 17-unit deal. And it was used as the down payment for the property. And the lender ended up financing the rest that I needed. Now, for those curious who want to know what the transaction involved, so for the cash out refi side, what was needed first were the documents that proved that I, in fact, could use that property to do a cash out refi. Lenders are very, very diligent about that because they want to make sure that they're performing a transaction on a property that is the right one, right? They don't want to put a lien or give you money and then it turns out that no one owned that property at the end of the day. So you need to provide evidence that I, in fact, had the right to leverage that property for the cash out refi. So that was one of the main things. The next thing that they needed to do was a property appraisal. They needed to see that whatever amount I was requesting on the cash out refi could in fact be backed by that property. Otherwise, if the property is not worth that much, then they will have to reduce the amount that I was requesting. So in this case, it turns out that the property appraisal came back lower than anticipated, and I needed to choose whether I wanted to move on or just accept the lower appraisal. And that in turn will translate to less money from the cash out refi. Not everything was lost. Even with the lower appraisal, I was still getting enough money to use for the down payment of the purchase of the multifamily. The entire transaction for the cash out refi lasted somewhat around 30 days, which is kind of like the standard in the market. Now, let's transition to the financing part of things, right? So with the financing, that took roughly about 3 months to close. It took 3 months because it's a commercial deal and there were a lot of properties in the equation. So one of the things that I realized is that the appraisal for a multifamily of that caliber was going to be really expensive. One thing is to do an appraisal in one building and that becomes one transaction. But given that this multifamily deal was spread out in different properties, the lender needed to do an appraisal in each and one of those properties. They couldn't do just one appraisal and use that one to sort of like determine the value of the other properties because each and one of them were different. So at the end of the day, I ended up paying a lot of money for each of those appraisals. And because I didn't have any savings, I ended up using my credit cards to cover that expense. I am not going to deny This deal was one of the most difficult ones I have ever done, and it had drained me completely emotionally and financially. But I don't regret it because I learned a lot from the process. And thanks to that process, I am able to create videos like this to help you in your investing journey. Once the appraisals were completed, it was just a matter of submitting all the documentation that was needed. For example, copies of the income statements. I needed to submit copies of the leases because the lender needed to verify that there was in fact a rental income coming in. So in the end, it all got approved after 90 painful days, and I was ready to close. And just like my other transactions, the closing happened long distance. The lender provided all the documents to the closing agency. The closing agency sent those to me through a secure portal. I printed them out and I went to a notary and signed all the required pages in front of that notary. And once I got all the signatures taken care of, I scanned the copy for my records. I always do that because anything could happen. Things can get lost in the mail, and I wanted to make sure that I had something within my records backing up that I perform everything that I needed to perform on my end. So after the scan, I mailed the hard copies with my signature using the prepaid label that the closing agency sent me. And once they received everything, the lender signed on their end. And voila, that's how the transaction happened. And I did this all while I was working a full-time job. Thanks to my power team, that's my agent, that's my closing agency, and the amazing investors who hesitantly at the beginning, but at the end agreed and participate in this real estate deal. As of today, the investor have gotten all of their money back plus interest, and I no longer have that multifamily because I decided to use that money and buy something bigger. And I will soon create an episode to talk about that new deal. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Please hit the like button down below and make sure you share this video with someone who you think will find this video helpful. See you in the next video. Bye-bye.